Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be completely unshakable? To face life's storms with the calm confidence of a mountain that stands firm against every wind? Today, we're going to explore 10 powerful Stoic habits that will transform you into someone who cannot be emotionally broken by external circumstances. These aren't just feel-good tips or modern self-help theories. These are battle-tested principles that have helped everyone from Roman emperors to everyday people navigate the most challenging situations life can throw at them. Marcus Aurelius used these very principles while ruling an empire and facing plagues, wars, and personal tragedies. But before we dive into these life-changing habits, I want to ask you to help me by subscribing to the channel and hitting that like button. This helps me continue creating content that can genuinely transform your life, just like the Stoic philosophy has transformed mine and millions of others throughout history. First habit, master the dichotomy of control. The foundation of all Stoic wisdom lies in understanding what the ancient philosophers called the dichotomy of control. This is the recognition that there are only two categories of things in life: what you can control and what you cannot control. What can you control? Your thoughts, your emotions, your actions, your responses, and your character. That's it. Everything else, other people's actions, the weather, the economy, traffic, the past, the future, lies outside your sphere of influence. Epictetus, who was born a slave and became one of the greatest philosophers in history, taught, wealth consists in not having great possessions, but in having few wants. But more importantly, he taught that true freedom comes from focusing only on what is up to us. I remember a time when I would lose my mind over things completely outside my control. I would rage at traffic jams, get frustrated when other people didn't meet my expectations, and stress endlessly about future outcomes I had no power over. This constant fighting against reality was exhausting and counterproductive. The transformation began when I started asking myself one simple question in every situation. Is this within my control? If the answer was no, I would consciously redirect my energy toward what I could influence. If the answer was yes, I would focus on taking purposeful action. This habit alone will save you enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy. Instead of wasting your precious life force fighting against unchangeable realities, you'll channel that energy into areas where you can actually make a difference. Second habit, practice morning reflection every morning. Before the world demands your attention, take a few minutes to set your philosophical foundation for the day. The Stoics believed that how you start your day determines the quality of your entire day. Marcus Aurelius would begin each day by reminding himself of Stoic principles. In his personal journal, which we now call Meditations, he wrote reminders to himself about the nature of life, the importance of virtue, and the temporary nature of all external things. Start your morning reflection with these questions. What challenges might I face today, and how can I respond with virtue? What opportunities will I have to practice patience, courage, justice, or wisdom? How can I serve something greater than myself today? This isn't about positive thinking or manifestation. It's about mental preparation. Just as an athlete stretches before a workout, you're stretching your philosophical muscles before engaging with the day's challenges. I have found that this simple practice creates a buffer between me and the reactive patterns that used to control my life. Instead of being caught off guard by difficulties, I'm mentally prepared to meet them with the best version of myself. Third habit, embrace discomfort. deliberately in our comfort-obsessed culture. This habit might seem counterintuitive, but it's one of the most powerful practices for building emotional resilience. The Stoics regularly practiced voluntary discomfort to prepare themselves for involuntary hardships. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, would periodically live like a poor person for several days. He would eat simple food, wear rough clothes, and sleep on hard surfaces. This wasn't masochism, it was training. By voluntarily experiencing discomfort, you prove to yourself that you can handle much more than you think. You break the spell of believing that comfort is necessary for happiness. You develop what the military calls stress inoculation. Modern ways to practice this might include taking cold showers, exercising when you don't feel like it, eating simple meals occasionally, walking instead of driving when possible, or sleeping without excessive comfort sometimes. The goal isn't to make yourself miserable. It's to expand your comfort zone and build confidence in your ability to handle whatever life throws at you. When you know you can be okay without perfect conditions, you become truly free. Fourth habit: view obstacles as training. Here's one of the most revolutionary ideas in Stoic philosophy. Every obstacle you face is specifically designed to make you stronger. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This doesn't mean that bad things are actually good. It means that your response to bad things can become the source of your greatest growth. Every challenge is an opportunity to practice virtue, to develop character, to become more resilient. When you face criticism, it's an opportunity to practice humility and self-examination. When you face loss, it's an opportunity to practice acceptance and gratitude for what remains. When you face injustice, it's an opportunity to practice courage and stand for what's right. I used to see problems as evidence that life was unfair or that I was unlucky. Now I see them as custom-designed training programs for developing the exact qualities I need to become who I'm meant to be. This shift in perspective is absolutely transformative. The next time you face a significant challenge, ask yourself, what virtue is this situation asking me to develop? How is this obstacle perfectly designed to make me stronger? What would the ideal version of myself do in this situation? Deleuze's fifth habit: practice negative visualization. This practice, called premeditatio malorum by the Romans, involves briefly imagining losing the things you value most. This might sound morbid, but it's actually one of the most powerful practices for developing gratitude and reducing anxiety. The Stoics understood that our suffering often comes not from what happens to us, but from the gap between what happens and what we expected to happen. By mentally preparing for loss, we reduce that gap and increase our appreciation for what we have. Spend a few minutes each week imagining losing your health, your loved ones, your job, or your possessions. Don't dwell on these thoughts or become anxious about them. Simply acknowledge that everything in life is temporary and can change. This practice serves two purposes. It prepares you emotionally for the inevitable changes and losses of life, and it makes you profoundly grateful for what you currently have. When you truly accept that you could lose everything, you stop taking anything for granted. I have found that people who regularly practice negative visualization are simultaneously more grateful for their current circumstances and more resilient when those circumstances change. They've already done the emotional work of acceptance. Sixth habit: focus on process, not outcomes. One of the quickest ways to become emotionally bulletproof is to detach your sense of worth and happiness from specific outcomes. The Stoics taught that we should focus entirely on our efforts and let the results take care of themselves. You can control how hard you work, how much preparation you do, how kind you are to others, and how much integrity you bring to your actions. You cannot control whether you get the promotion, whether other people appreciate your efforts, or whether your plans work out exactly as you envision. This doesn't mean you shouldn't have goals or preferences. It means you shouldn't base your emotional well-being on achieving specific outcomes. Your satisfaction should come from knowing you gave your best effort with good intentions. Think of it like an archer. A skilled archer focuses completely on their form, their breathing, their aim, and their release. They don't try to control the wind or the target's movement. They control what they can control and accept what they cannot. When you adopt this mindset, you become free from the anxiety of needing things to turn out a specific way. You can pursue your goals with full intensity while remaining emotionally detached from the results. Seventh habit, cultivate inner scorecard most. People live their lives according to what Warren Buffett calls an outer scorecard. They measure their worth by what others think of them. The Stoics lived by an inner scorecard. They measured their worth by their own standards of virtue and character. Cato the Younger was famous for this. He would often take positions that were unpopular but aligned with his principles. When people mocked him for his unusual behavior, he remained unmoved because he was living according to his own moral compass, not seeking external approval. This habit requires you to define your own values clearly and then live by them regardless of what others think. It means doing the right thing, even when no one is watching, even when it's difficult, even when others don't understand. Ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be? What values are non-negotiable for me? How can I live in alignment with these values today? Then make decisions based on these internal standards rather than external pressures or expectations. When you develop a strong inner scorecard, you become immune to criticism from people whose opinions shouldn't matter to you, and you become independent of praise from people whose approval you've been desperately seeking. Sir. Eighth habit, practice evening reflection. Seneca had a daily practice of reviewing his day before sleep. He would examine his actions, thoughts, and responses, not to judge himself harshly, but to learn and improve. This evening reflection is crucial for continuous growth. Each night, ask yourself these questions. What did I do well today? Where did I fall short of my standards? What triggered emotional reactions in me? How can I respond better in similar situations tomorrow? This isn't about perfection or self-criticism. It's about conscious evolution. The unexamined life, as Socrates said, is not worth living. By regularly examining your thoughts and actions, you accelerate your personal development. I've found that this practice helps me process the day's events constructively rather than carrying unresolved emotions into the next day. It also helps me identify patterns in my behavior that I want to change. Keep a simple journal for this practice. Write just a few sentences about your observations and insights. Over time, you'll see clear patterns of growth and development that will motivate you to continue improving. Ninth habit, memento mori. Remember death. The Stoics regularly contemplated mortality, not to be morbid, but to maintain perspective on what truly matters. Memento mori, remember death, was a common Stoic practice for prioritizing and living intentionally. When you remember that your time is limited, you stop wasting it on trivial concerns. You stop postponing important conversations. You stop delaying meaningful activities. You start living with urgency and purpose. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live. The awareness of mortality doesn't make life depressing. It makes life precious and motivates you to make the most of every day. This practice also helps you maintain perspective during difficult times. When you remember that both you and your problems are temporary, it becomes easier to maintain equanimity in the face of challenges. Once a week, spend a few minutes contemplating the reality that your life will end. Ask yourself, if I only had 1 year to live, what would I focus on? What would I stop worrying about? How would I want to be remembered? Tam. 10th habit, serve something greater than yourself. The final habit that makes you emotionally bulletproof is dedicating your life to something larger than your personal interests. The Stoics believed that humans are social beings with a duty to contribute to the common good. When your identity and purpose are connected to serving others, contributing to your community, or advancing important causes, you become less vulnerable to personal setbacks and disappointments. Your worth isn't dependent on your personal success alone. Marcus Aurelius, despite being the most powerful man in the world, saw himself as a servant of Rome and humanity. This perspective helped him handle enormous responsibilities and challenges with grace and wisdom. Find ways to contribute to something meaningful beyond yourself. This might be your family, your community, a cause you believe in, or simply being an example of virtue for others to follow. When you live for something greater than yourself, you tap into a source of strength and resilience that purely self-focused living cannot provide. You become part of something eternal and significant. Integration and practice, these 10 habits work together as a complete system for emotional resilience and wisdom. You don't need to master them all at once. Start with 1 or 2 that resonate most strongly with you, and gradually incorporate the others as they become natural. Remember, Stoicism is not about suppressing emotions or becoming cold and unfeeling. It's about developing a mature, wise relationship with your emotions so that you can respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. The goal is not to become emotionless, but to become emotionally intelligent and resilient. You want to feel deeply while remaining centered, to care passionately while staying balanced, to engage fully while maintaining perspective. The promise of Stoic living, when you consistently practice these habits, you develop what the Stoics called ataraxia, an unshakable tranquility that doesn't depend on external circumstances. You become like a deep lake that remains calm even when storms rage on the surface. This doesn't mean your life becomes problem-free. It means you develop the wisdom and strength to handle whatever comes with grace and effectiveness. You stop being a victim of circumstances and become the architect of your own character and destiny. The benefits extend to every area of your life. Your relationships improve because you're not constantly reactive. Your work improves because you can maintain focus under pressure. Your health improves because chronic stress decreases significantly. But perhaps most importantly, you develop a deep sense of inner freedom. You're no longer enslaved by your emotions, dependent on others' approval, or vulnerable to circumstances beyond your control. You become truly free. Your Stoic journey begins now. The wisdom of the Stoics has survived for over 2,000 years because it works. These principles have helped people through wars, plagues, personal tragedies, and every kind of challenge imaginable. They will work for you too, but only if you practice them consistently. Choose one habit from today's list and commit to practicing it for the next week. Notice how it changes your experience of life. Notice how you begin to respond differently to challenges and setbacks. Remember the words of Epictetus: "No one can hurt you without your permission." You have the power to choose your responses, to develop your character, and to live according to your highest values, regardless of what happens around you. If this video has been valuable to you, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss future content that can continue transforming your life. Leave a comment telling me which habit you're going to start with. This helps me know you watched the full video and are committed to your growth. Until next time, may you live with the wisdom and strength of the ancient Stoics, and may you discover the unshakable peace that comes from mastering yourself.